Okay, everyone. Hello, we are recording. Good evening and congratulations on making it through your professional experience. So those of you who are here in the Zoom session and also those of you who are watching from the comfort of your home. So the workshop outline, most of it is going to be you guys talking. I am not going to do a lot of talking tonight. It's going to be about you sharing. So we're going to share. Oh my goodness, Tracy, I for a minute there, I thought you had a glass of wine. I'm disappointed.
I wish. I have had a glass of wine while I've been doing a workshop, but I try and be sneaky, but no, it's water.
Well, this is a celebration, and before we went out on placement, I told everyone that we would be, the internal group, we bring a plate of food to share, but those of you that were here last time, we thought maybe we could have a drink while we were doing the Zoom, but I certainly don't drink on the job. I'm just making sure you all know that. Okay, so we're going to have a look at each other's professional experience folders. Then we're going to look at the professional experience goals. I actually asked you to bring one with you and think about that. And talk a little bit about PLC groups, because not everyone is here who were in the PLC groups last time. We might just have a chat about what that involved during placement. Journal reflection and teacher toolbox. So at the end, I'm going to ask you all to share one tool that you're going to take with you into your next professional experience. So a resource or a tool that you might like to share with the rest of us. And then of course, we're going to have a look at assessment item 2. So a bit of support for that. I know you're probably just thinking, oh my goodness, we've just finished placement and now she's talking about the next bit of assessment, but it is due in week 10 and I want you to be very prepared for that. Okay. All right, so just quickly, it's really important. Debriefing, especially after a 15-day placement, is so important. It's really important that you assess what you've learned and what the significance of what you learn on placement is and what you're going to do with that learning and that reflection moving into your next placement. So that's what it's all about. Lots and lots of hard work, and you know, there would have been some amazing challenges and also some wonderful achievements from those challenges as well. So we want to make sure that you really have the opportunity to unpack those. Okay, so there are 4 points up on the slide. Now we've got a small group. I would like you to grab your folders out. And I'd like you to think about those 4 points on the slide, but we've got an uneven number. So my plan was to actually put you into breakout groups and share them, but that's not going to work. I want you to, we're going to take turns. Kieran, do you mind going first? Yep. So I just want you to maybe think about and discuss how you organized your folder, what planning formats that you used, where you got them from, because some of you may have used ones on Blackboard possibly to start with and then moved into something else that your supervising teacher was using. And when did you discuss and reflect on your work with your supervising teacher? I want to start with that first question first, because for some of you, your supervising teacher may have never wanted to see your folder, and this could be fairly common, but they would have observed that you were constantly writing notes and that you were keeping it updated. And then there's always that off chance that the deputy head walks into the room and wants to look at the folder as well. So it is important that you have it up to date. So Kieran, let's start from the bottom. When did you discuss and reflect on your work with your supervising teacher?
We shared lunch and morning tea together. So she would give me a rundown then, which was great. But the excellent thing that she did do too was then she would also email me that feedback. So she would take notes on her iPad talk about it with me so I could ask her sort of clarifying questions and stuff. But then I would have the chance in the evenings to read her email, and it would just sink in, you know, because sometimes you've just taken a lesson and you're a bit like, wow. And only bits of the feedback would come in, so into your brain. So it was good to get it at the end of the day, and read it and be able to actually take it on board for the next day's work.
Okay, so when you say take it on board, to then go home and think about what your supervising teacher said, and then possibly in your planning for the next day include some of those suggestions or the feedback that they gave you. Yeah, that's fantastic. And did you manage to keep all the documentation up to date?
Yeah, I did actually. I was in a prep classroom, so there wasn't a huge amount of lesson planning. It was already very structured, and I took a lot of lessons, but it was stuff that had been planned earlier in the year, you know, so I didn't have to sort of work up my own little lesson on shapes or anything like that. Like the planning was already done. So that meant that I had a lot of time in the evenings to do the reflections, and I still had to prepare for the next day's lessons that I was going to take, but I didn't have that starting from scratch that I know a couple of people did, where they were just suddenly told, okay, tomorrow you're doing an hour-long lesson on angles, off you go and start from scratch. I was lucky in that regard. And
not even tomorrow, it's like, okay, in an hour or next up. Anyone have that experience, Amy or Tracy? Yeah. Okay, extremely challenging. But every single environment is so different, and this is what debriefing is all about, sharing those experiences. Because Karen, you were in a prep room. Amy, what year were you doing?
I had grade 7, 9, 11 and 12.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Oh. And Tracy?
I had, sorry.
No,
I had
Amy.
A couple of English classes for grade 7, and then the rest was in my first teaching area.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. And Tracy?
I had grade 6.
Grade 6. Okay, so lots of different experiences. So Tracy, if you were to do prep next time, it would be very different to what you've just experienced, and likewise for you, Karen. So as part of debriefing, I always like to suggest, and I know it's quite difficult when you're studying externally, but trying to make those connections, because I'm a big supporter of sharing resources and sharing experiences. And that's what PLCs are all about. And prior to professional experiences, those of you that came along to the workshop would have been able to be paired up with someone, and hopefully you would have been able to share some of your experiences during placement and possibly share your resources. We're going to talk about the PLCs a little bit later. So planning formats, Karen, were they ones that your supervising teacher used?
Yeah, she printed out, I took from when I started, about halfway through my first week, I took over the English lessons. So I would do the literacy block from 9 till 11, and I used the schools that are given to all of the prep teachers. So I used a lot of that. Obviously, I did my own planning as well, because there were things that would just be second nature to her that I really needed to go home and write down. So I would remember them. And she also said a good thing for me to do was just to write on the whiteboard near me the steps in something like, I took some art lessons and some science lessons that involved various steps that the kids had to go through, and so it was good for me to just have it on the board, so I could be like, oh, now you've got to do this and then you've got to do that, and so that was pretty handy.
So Tracy, is this different to your experience in terms of the planning, the lesson planning formats and things that you used?
Yeah, I started off, I used the one that you had in the folder, and I continued to use that all the way through, basically just to do my plan. I was just writing notes so I could remember when it was my turn. And she was quite happy for the first lesson. She said, you just do whatever you feel. And then I've obviously forwarded her my planning, but I did notice she used a lot of PowerPoints. So every lesson had a PowerPoint, and I found out through trial and error that doing lessons on the smart board, it was a lot harder to zoom in and do things in a Word document or in a PDF.
Okay.
So yeah, her advice was, yeah.
Use the interactive whiteboard in your lessons with PowerPoints?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I actually found my experience very, very eye-opening, because I found it really didn't align with anything much that we have done at uni so far.
Okay, that's interesting.
Really
And
low.
exciting.
Oh my gosh, like I would not change it for anything. Like
That's
it
fantastic.
blew my mind.
Yeah. So are you happy to share some of the things that blew your mind in terms of the planning and?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I probably felt as though it was I think it's kind of good that I came from QUT, because I was also in a staff room with other universities, and they all kind of thought of the QUT teachers, oh wow, you guys are really, you do really in-depth stuff and you really plan. And so I'm glad that that's the case. And I actually opted to really push to keep that. My supervising teacher literally did a bit of a script on a Word document, and even that never went to plan. So I actually took it upon myself. Sorry?
Very spontaneous?
Yeah, so I struggled with that.
Okay.
She was excellent. Like, she allowed me to keep my planning still and then give me the tools to help me change it on the spot. I had to do a lot of stuff, I guess you'd call it old school. So handwritten on a whiteboard, that's it.
Okay.
A lot of the kids at my school are lucky to have a device, and a lot of them don't have internet at home.
Okay.
That was the general feedback that came into the class, and I was kind of like, what do I do?
Yeah. So what was it that made it so amazing? What was it that really excited you about that experience?
I just felt as though I was it really gave me an opportunity to, number one, learn a lot about behavior management, just as a side note. And number two, really, really dig in and call upon all of my content knowledge then and there, without sort of having it on PowerPoints, only having it on paper. So knowing the content that I had to teach, but then on top of that, knowing and implementing how to teach it.
Okay. Wow.
It was good.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So lots and lots of challenges.
Yeah, I mean, like, I saw some pretty horrific situations that I really sort of stressed me out at the time, but in hindsight, I'm glad that I saw them. And then still, teachers continue to teach regardless of those things that sort of go on day to day, and it amazed me. And I was like, okay, this is what a teacher is. Like, this is all part and parcel of being a teacher, you know, giving all kids the same opportunity to learn, despite the fact that they're coming to school hungry, or they're coming to school and the night before they've been taken away from their parents, which literally happened on one of my days there. And I cried at lunchtime. Like, it was awful, but just brilliant. Like,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It
does.
And I think by the sounds of it, the style of teaching, the sort of pedagogical beliefs that your teacher was basing their planning on, was very much because it's so flexible with those students coming into the classroom and things changing constantly. You're not really knowing what's going to happen at any one time. Being more flexible is going to allow you to differentiate for those students. Having a plan that you stick to no matter what in those situations, students are just going to miss out on so much learning. So it sounds like it was an amazing experience to observe.
It was, yeah.
And be part of. That's great. Thanks, Tracy. Amy, I was going to say, and Tracy, So you talked about your planning formats. Did you feel that you were able to keep up to date with the work that you had to do?
Yeah, I was really lucky, and I had my supervising teacher had actually done the mentor teaching course at QUT earlier this year. So she was very excited to be able to share the stuff that she had learned as well.
Mm-hmm.
She was super organised, which was really, as I said to her, I couldn't have been placed with a more perfect match. She sent me through her planning the first weekend before I started, and I can show you if you like. It was all colour coded, and I was like, yes, this is my kind of lady. So yeah, I was really lucky.
That's amazing. So it sounds almost the teachers that you and Amy had were polar opposites, but you both got so much out of it. That's fantastic to hear. And that's often the case. It really is. And, you know, your next placement will be, you know, an even different experience. And that's all part of us developing understandings and moving towards writing our statement, our philosophical statement, and thinking about who we really are as a teacher. And you're not going to be, you know, Amy, you may not necessarily end up teaching like your supervising teacher, and Tracy, you may not either, but you will have a really good understanding of a variety of different teaching styles. Kieran, what kind of teaching style would you describe your supervising teacher as having?
She was super big on behaviour management, zero tolerance in the classroom, which in the first week I found really full on. It's not necessarily my style. It's not what I've seen. You know, my daughter goes to a sort of, I guess, a leafy green suburban primary school, so there they seem to be a bit more relaxed, and so initially I was a bit like, whoa, she's full on. But I think it was the lower socioeconomic neighbourhood. Just you come down hard early, and then and I noticed it myself when I took a lesson where there were things that weren't necessarily worrying me, like, you know, kids sitting on the floor if they didn't have their hands in their lap, sitting cross-legged. I didn't mind if they had their legs out or whatever, but it wasn't until I took that lesson and didn't jump on that behaviour immediately and get them to put their names down on the little behaviour chart thing that I realised it easily escalates. So she had gone in with a sort of zero tolerance. There is no misbehaviour in my classroom. She's also super organised. She's the most organised person I've ever met in my entire life. In fact, we had a free period one day, a non-contact, and she was working on her lesson planning for first term next year. And I was just like, wow, that's really far ahead. You're pretty organised. So I learnt a lot from that too.
How long had she been teaching for?
2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, super, super fresh. Which, and again, initially I'd been a bit, when I Googled her when I first got her name.
Of
and
course you did.
like, yeah. I was like, oh, she's only just graduated. You know, this is going to be interesting. You know, I'm older than her and she's so new to it and stuff. But I did learn a lot from her. She was impressive.
And I'm sure she could probably understand where you were coming from as well.
Yeah, absolutely. She talked a lot about her own pracs, and, you know, sort of really reassured me in my first week. She was like, oh, my first year of teaching, I taught the wrong science unit in the wrong term and stuff. So she said, you know, don't freak out, which was nice.
It's really good to hear those sorts of things from, you know, experienced teachers. You know, no one's perfect and things are going to go wrong, and it's all part of teaching. And I guess in some ways you do have to have a bit of a sense of humor about those things in a lot of respects. Excellent. Okay, so this final point down here, during your next professional experience, what might you do differently in terms of your organisation? I'm talking about, we're focusing on organisation here, even though we're sort of diverging into different areas, which is going to happen for the next hour or so. But what might you do differently?
I'd probably, I mean, now that I'm equipped with it, I feel differently about it, but I would probably very quickly seek out behavior management protocols, classroom management protocols, any kind of protocols other than content in what I'm supposed to teach. Simply because it can, and I'm assuming this would be a problem that would affect all levels of schooling, the teachers involved in schooling. If it goes off track and you don't know what the proper protocol is, which I didn't in the first few days, it can really spiral in a different kind of way, because kids they know what's supposed to happen when they do certain things wrong. And if they don't get that punishment from you, it's like, it is near impossible to get those students back the entire time. So that's something I'd probably do differently, seek out those protocols.
It's something that you were talking about too, Karen. So those expectations that the teacher has for the class, and make sure that you understand them completely, and that you follow through on those, that there's that consistency there. A really good point, Amy. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything that you might do differently next time? That was a really good example, Amy. Thank you.
I'll jump in. I had a bit of a rude wake up.
Is that Krista? Sorry, is that Krista?
Emily.
Emily. Sorry, Emily. We can't see you. I can't see you up on the screen now. I'm sorry. I didn't.
I think there's a few of us on here too.
Oh my goodness, there are two.
Hello.
I'm so sorry. I've been missed. You should have spoken up. I'm very sorry. You were sitting there and I didn't even see you. We've got Yuha there as well, and Melanie. I am so sorry.
Oh,
I apologize. You disappeared.
I've been eating my dinner, so apologies.
Eating your dinner. Okay. All right. Okay, Emily, thank you. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Not at all. Yeah, my lovely teacher is an ex criminal reform lawyer who is 7 years into her teaching career. She loves maths and she's got 3 teenage sons. I only say that because she just felt a mile away from me with how she came at things, and I got really caught out with my organisation in how much preparation there was that you just have to keep on top of, and planning. And then my teacher, everything was all slideshows, and setting up a maths lesson with 3 separate rotations that were all differentiated, and having that carefully planned and all of the resources. And she was just, bless her, such a type A that her messages relayed to me were 30 seconds in passing in the hallway kind of. It felt. We did sit down and I was emailed a whole lot of things, but nothing was really explained. So it was the biggest wake-up call in organisation, and asking the right questions and just researching everything myself. And the essential classroom behaviour strategy.
Essential skills for classroom management?
Yeah, the ones that we went through in workshop 3. Yeah.
She emailed me the flip book for that, because my goal, one of them was behaviour management. So all these things, it all came together beautifully in the 3rd week, but for the first week and a half, it was such a scramble. I'm so prepared for the next one, and how huge it is and how much you need to resource.
Yes, yeah. That's why this first one, it's developing. That's why it was, I guess it's a way of easing you in to your next few placements, working towards your final one, your TPA. So Emily, sorry?
Jumping in the deep end for some of us, which prepares you nicely for the next one.
That's right. Melanie, anything that you wanted to add to that? Anything that you might do differently in your next professional experience?
Well, I'm thinking, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Of course. I'm thinking behaviour management might need to be a little different next time. I was really blessed. I had an accelerated learning class. They were just beautiful, and probably the biggest behaviour issue I had was they were really chatty. They were very vibrant. I just adored them. So I sort of witnessed a couple of the neighbouring classes had very different behaviour standards. So I think I'd have to really see whether my behaviour strategies would still work as effectively on my next placement.
Probably they won't.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You just think you've got it down pat, and then you get a completely different group or a teacher that teaches in a different way that has that might use a loud voice instead of a quiet voice or.
Yeah, and I think my supervising teacher and I were really well matched, actually. Like, I just absolutely loved the way she teaches. Her classroom was amazing. She was just phenomenal. So, yeah, I think she's kind of what I'd like to model myself after. So I was pretty lucky there.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah. Krista,
Hi.
would you like to share something that you might do differently in your next placement?
Sure. My school was a strange one. It was year 6 class. It's in Cairns. It's 17% Indigenous, low socioeconomic background, but extremely high NAPLAN scoring. It's the top number 25 in Queensland primary school.
Oh, that's amazing.
And the principal's a QUT student. He's finishing up his master's. So it was weird. I had to go in and my content knowledge was not good enough. And so the only thing that saved me was the literature course. I went back to the textbook and everything we did, and studying really, really hard for the land tight. I studied 3 months for that thing to get.
Yeah.
So that saved me. My maths, I was drowning because they were all in year 7 extension maths.
Oh my goodness.
The whole class. And then I could differentiate for all the ones that were down to like year 5. Some of them left the classroom, but I was way in over my head and I got called out on it big time. And they kind of said,
the students?
No, the teacher said, if you don't pull this up quickly, this isn't good enough. And so I knuckled down and did fine, even surprised her, but.
Well done.
Thank you. I found she directed me toward a really good website that's all Australian curriculum linked for English and for maths, and it's IXL. Has anyone ever heard of that? Yeah, that's where I used for some of my lessons, and that I think I need to work my way through that, even with the land tight, to come out the other side there for the next one. My content needs to be much stronger.
Excellent. Well, that's a really good point. Something that you might do differently next time. Something that you need to work towards. So
exactly. I was drowning. Yeah.
I guess when we're talking about goals a bit later on, that's possibly a good one that some of you may be focusing on as well, noticing that there are areas with content that you need to work on. Mm-hmm. Yuha, anything that you might do differently during your placement?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to turn off the vehicles everywhere is dark. I'm in my car outside the parking. I'm sorry for that.
I apologize. That's fine.
Yeah. So I was allocated to year 6 class, and I found it's really great for me to learn from my supervisor. My supervisor arrived at the school very early, around 7 o'clock every day, and leave after 4:30. So every day for the past 3 weeks, I will be with her. So from 7:20 to 4:30. Yeah, so like that. But so that gave me some extra time to work with her, especially in the morning session before the class started, and also the afternoon session. So from 3 o'clock to 4:30. So we worked together on the planning, and also she gave me some responses, feedback on my teaching. So on the first day, that is the leading day, she gave me, we worked together on how to make a teaching plan based on assessments. So I think that's really good for me. So actually I planned, I made a teaching plan, 2 units of maths. So one is the integer and another one is measurements for year 6 student. And I use the planning format you uploaded in the folder. But later I found that my supervisor would like me to use PowerPoint. So I put the content from the planning format to a PowerPoint session formatting. So, and also I use the way she is teaching at that school. So use I do, we do, and you do, and also look at and also I use see, think, and imagine. So this format to do. So I think that's really good for me to learn. And also I share the teaching plan with all year 6 teachers. We have 5 classes for year 6. So in that school, so we share that. So I think that's a really good chance for me to learn where I am doing this.
That sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You are
Thank you.
again a very different experience again. Have we spoken to everyone? Has everyone had the opportunity to think about what they might do differently? Have I missed anyone out? Speak now. No? Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that with everyone. There's quite a bit of reflection that we're going to be doing, but one of the things that I want you to all think about, I asked you to come in with this particular form. This is an example, but the form was on Blackboard, just to think about a goal that you had during your placement. So possibly something towards the end, and how you actually achieved this goal and what evidence you can think of that showed that you achieved it, that you were successful. Who would like to share a goal that they set during their placement and how they achieved it?
Oh, no, you go, Melanie.
Oh, are you sure? Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share one. So one of my goals was to increase my confidence and proficiency at creating quality lesson plans. So shall I say the actions?
Yeah. When, just one moment, I have a question. When did you set this goal?
This was one of the ones. I set 3 right at the beginning. Yeah. And then I just monitored them. So this was like one I was focused on throughout the 3 weeks. And I utilized the lesson planning template provided by yourself. I reflected following each lesson on the effectiveness of the plan and the lesson. And I listened to and implemented feedback from my supervising teacher. And I took every available opportunity to participate in lesson planning and listen to feedback from my university partner during that professional learning conversation. It sounds so obvious, but she said to me to write the plan as if a relief teacher could just pick it up and roll with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why didn't I even think of that? I was writing it for me. That really helps me.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I was given feedback by the supervising teacher. She felt like I was improving in that area and the students were engaged, and she noticed that. So yeah, I feel like I improved.
Excellent. Very good.
Thank you.
So that's really good. And so you said you ended up using PowerPoints.
No, that wasn't.
PowerPoint, sorry, no. My question was, did you use PowerPoints at all, or did you use that structured written plan?
Oh, so I was in an iPad class. So I actually created PowerPoint resources for every lesson regardless, but that wasn't my planning. Like I considered that my resource. And then I would create like little digital workbooks or worksheets as well. But I stuck to the planning every lesson I did because I sent that to my supervising teacher like the day before, just so she could make sure she was happy with what I was going to do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How did you find, were there any times when, you've got your plan there and you're really happy with it, that it just wasn't working, or that you felt that you needed to adapt it to suit individual students or possibly all of the students?
Yeah, definitely. They were a really vibrant class and they really liked to have a lot of input. So timing was a big thing to me, to try and keep that on track. I had one particular lesson and it was kind of going pear-shaped. And so in the end, the kids, I don't know what happened. It was a really windy day and they were wild, I swear. So I just stopped the lesson and we played silent ball for a little while just to kind of get the wiggles out and went back to it. So yeah, I did have to be flexible, but I just kind of had it there as this is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's great. It's good that you could stop and you could move on. You saw that it just wasn't working. And sometimes it seems easier to just soldier on and just do it. But, you know, obviously the students aren't getting the learning opportunities that we would hope. So well done. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the goal. Anyone else ready to share a goal? Who else was it that
Oh, that was me, that Emily.
Emily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my goal was behaviour management, and it was interesting to watch, just to soak up all of the things that my teacher did in her teaching and with her class that were actually that one class you get every 10 years, she'd say, because we did actually, there was 6 grade 3s, so we would teach the different classes across the week, and I taught one of her lessons it was a different class, and she said they're either going to smell blood or they're not.
Oh my goodness.
It was very much like I'll sink or swim with this, because they had a lot of behaviours in that class. But it was one of my goals, and it was something that I reflected on regularly, and I would get feedback after every lesson around that. And it was a real focus. And by the end of the 3 weeks, she said that she thought I was well on my way to having nailed that, that's I feel like a lifelong thing to actually keep the class focused. So that felt really good to really focus on it. And I didn't really understand what setting the goals was all about at the start, but now I see.
Yeah, cool. That's fantastic. That's really good. Thank you very much, Emily. Someone else?
I set 2 goals at the start, and then I set one after my first week of teaching with my supervising teacher. One of the goals I actually set was on recommendation before I started, and it already said in the template, but my supervising teacher advised to set that before we start, which was a behavior management one.
Yeah.
She wasn't kidding either. But my goal that I probably worked the most on was kind of what we spoke about a little while ago, implementing and demonstrating the knowledge that I have in a way that students can receive it and build upon it. And that I found that very difficult at first, and I actually at one point got very, very upset. I just felt like it wasn't translating, it wasn't, and it was to do with literacy. Even though my first area is drama, I'm very passionate about literacy and English. So my school had a policy where every single class has to do some kind of literacy writing or work in every class, because their NAPLAN results for year 9s were beyond poor. But I actually didn't know how I would measure that. My supervising teacher told me I did really well and I had nothing to worry about and I was doing really well. And it wasn't until probably the last day I actually got one of my students in grade 11 made me this, and it's a poem. And I remember I had a conversation with her. She had to write an art journal, and I said, you know, it's really, really good. You've got a lot of information in there, but you're being asked to reflect. So, you know, you need to improve your reflective vocabulary, and you need to really think about the choices in words that you're using, because she wants to go to university. And she decided, of all things she could give me, she'd try and use her vocabulary that she'd worked on and made me a poem. And she's got some spelling wrong, but I was moved beyond words. So that's how I measured. I'd done something right for someone.
That's your evidence. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's really good. Wow. And so you obviously made quite a connection with the student.
I did, yeah. I was to be honest with you, I was amazed by some of them. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm 31 and I've never ever been through or seen some of the things that your kids have been through and seen, like, and you're still at school.
Yeah.
It was just, you know,
Yeah.
inspiring.
Blown away. Yeah. Now, I've heard quite a few students over the last few days doing these debriefing workshops that have had some fairly life-changing experiences, really, just interacting with young people and seeing things that they really haven't seen, and I guess what they have described as fairly sheltered lives. So it's quite exciting. It really is. So one more. Someone else that would like to share a goal?
I'll go.
Okay, Tracy.
Mine was quite simple to start with. My goal was just to learn all of the students' names and to be able to have a conversation with them about something personal to them.
Yep, I remember that one.
Yep, so I had asked for a class photo, which was your recommendation. I also asked to be able to mark the roll, which I did on a paper roll, and instead of them just answering that they were here, I had a question for them that they had to give me a personal response to, like whether it was their favourite sport or something like that.
Great idea.
I also had, my actions were to seize opportunities. So like when we were transitioning to PE or music or something like that, I was always make sure that I would try and walk side by side with a different student and just start having a chat or a conversation. We went to, I had to do interschool sport because I was with grade 6. And that was quite interesting to, obviously it wasn't just children in the class, it was 4, 5 and 6. And so I chose to sit next to different people on the bus and just initiate conversations with them. So I was quite lucky, I think, that by the middle of the second week I had most of the names down pat. So then my next goal for myself was that I wanted to push those kids that were sort of a little bit more resilient and weren't open to chatting, and to try and get them to actually come up and initiate conversations with me. So
wow, they are very well thought out actions, like some really practical ideas.
I love that, Tracy. Sorry, I love that. That was great.
Yeah, that's really good. Like there's so many things there that we can take on board, some really good ideas. It's fantastic. And so evidence of success, Tracy?
Evidence of success that I could name all the children. When they put their hands up, I knew who they were to call upon. Same as Amy, at the end of the 3 weeks, I had 2 of the girls in the class had gone around and made cards and got all of the children to sign. And I actually had probably about 3 or 4 that made individual cards. And the big bonus for me, and even the teacher was quite blown away, that I bought them all like a pencil with a little rubber on the end, and she was even blown away at the students that actually chose to give me a hug as they walked out the door, because she was like, wow, I've never. So that was for me, that was the big ticket, I think, because this was the teacher who dealt with them. Yeah.
So there's lots of evidence there. That's fantastic. That's really good. That's a great goal, and I can really see how you've thought about that goal setting process as well. And even like if we look down at the SMART goals as well, like being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and timely, you set that timeline, and by week 3 you said you really did. You were able to use the students' names and call upon them using their names and to interact with them. So it wasn't just about learning their names. You'd extended it once you'd done that to developing really strong relationships with them. And that's a real credit to you, Tracy. Well done. Congratulations.
Can I just jump in here? I was actively discouraged from asking the students that I worked with anything personal about themselves. And so initially in those first few days, it was really difficult. But she, you know, my teacher stressed, I've told them you're not their friend, you're going to be their teacher. A teacher is not a friend. We don't make friendships with them, so don't ask them personal stuff. Don't tell them personal things about yourself. And so that was, after everything we discussed in the workshops leading into it, try and find out as much as you can about them and what they're interested in and stuff. I was like, okay, what do I do here? You know, it worked out fine. I'm pretty good with name recognition anyway, but it was just a bit of a jolt, I guess, not being able to ask them things about themselves.
So,
And Karen, did you say you had prep?
Yes.
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe it was a bit prep students, you know, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Next thing you'll hear the whole life story and you won't ever be able to shut them down again.
I just on that though, Kieran, I actually don't think you're sort of alone there, because that was also a thing in my high school. The only difference is that they're older. So I was told, you know, don't actively go and try and get involved in, you know, what's going on for them, which I understand. But I guess the difference with you is that if they did come to a teacher, we were allowed to sort of go, okay, well, this is the course of action you need to take, or something like that. But I don't think you're alone there.
Karen, was that something that your teacher, so obviously your teacher would know very, you know, a lot about the students, and she would have developed a relationship with them?
Sorry, did you just ask me that?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, she did. And I still, you know, found out things about them and that sort of thing. But I think she just, in those early stages, she wanted to set me apart from being this friend that sat up the back watching them all and chatted to them all about their lives. You know, I get that. Yeah. And I wonder too, with a lower socioeconomic school as well, whether there isn't a little bit, if there's any sort of difficult relationships at home, they don't want them latching onto you to get that sort of that warmth or something that they may not be getting elsewhere. I'm not sure. I didn't really probe that.
That was the impression I got as well, Kieran.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Karen and Amy, as well as students going into an environment for 3 weeks, that's something that a lot of teachers will be very cautious about. You're only going to be there for 3 weeks, and to develop those relationships with some students that possibly, you know, it would be quite upsetting when you did leave. You know, we all experience that when we go out on placement, but I guess for some students it can be quite distressing as well. So, you know, there's so many different things that we need to consider. And I think from what you've been talking about, context is such a big issue, like the where you're actually working, the environment, the makeup of the community, and also your personality, the teacher's personality, all of those things. Just listening to everyone's experiences, they're all so completely different in so many ways. And even if we are very similar, you know, whether we're organised or disorganised, or we like to get close to people or we don't, so many different things. Even if we are similar, there's still going to be some major differences. So very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing.
Could I please add something to that topic? Sorry, it's Melody.
Please do.
So I feel really lucky my supervising teacher was really encouraging about forming the positive relationships, but I was at a trauma school, like they're a recognised trauma school. They do the Berry Street program there. But yeah, she was really encouraging about it. And this is like a stack of cards and things that I have, and the flowers behind me were from a student. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, I found it really hard to say goodbye after 3 weeks. So I totally get what everyone's saying. I can only imagine how hard it is to say goodbye after.
I was very much encouraged to. She explicitly said to form as many connections and to ask them about their lives and about their, basically forge that connection. philosophy being that the more connected you are, the more trust and the more learning happens, and all that, a positive education pathway. And at the end, there was nearly tears, and I went back in today to pick up some paperwork, and I had 20 children just about knock me over with a hug, which I found hard to manage because it was their class time and I felt like I'd royally interrupted.
Disrupted.
An interesting thing, if I was told not to do that, my nature is the flip of that. And that's so interesting. I would have never have thought that that would be a thing in a classroom. So thank you. That's a great insight.
Yeah. Emily, let's hope you don't experience a classroom like that though, because obviously that would be a really difficult environment for you to work in, by the sounds of it. Excellent.
It would really,
But you would work it out, you would find a way. Okay, anyone else before we move on? Okay, so our professional learning conversation group. So prior to going on professional experience, we did divide into pairs, and hopefully those of you that were in the session did keep in contact with your partner and were able to support each other in some way. But what about other learning conversations that you had during your professional experience? Some of you would have had Zooms possibly with your university partner, or you may have actually had the opportunity to attend meetings and discussions with your colleagues in the schools. So what sorts of things did we do? Who would like to share an experience?
Hi, Angela.
You there?
I would like to share some professional learning experience at the school where I was allocated. So this is why I think that's pretty good. They organized some professional workshop for the practical teachers. We have when I was there the first day, in the first 2 weeks, we had 4 professional practical teachers. So 3 from QUT and 1 from Curtin University. So we had 4 of us. So the school organized 3 workshops for 4 of us. So one is about running record, and then the other one how to start our teaching. How to survive the first term of our teaching, so that one. And another, so we had 3 professional workshop. I think that's really helpful for us. And so in this case, we contacted we get contact with each other, especially the pregnant teacher. So that's really good. And also we learned something from the teachers in the real life. So I think that's really good.
Excellent. So lots of collaboration.
Yes.
So with each other as students, but also with the teachers as well. So the school actually organised that professional development. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Anyone else would like to share one of their experiences at their school in terms of conversation groups or collaboration?
We did something very similar. So every week we had a professional development for prac teachers. So just in my staff room, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 6 prac teachers just in my staff room. So yeah, my school has they take a lot of prac teachers, and they take a lot of first year teachers. So one of the English teachers at that school actually runs the program in the Logan area for first year teachers working on their portfolios.
Yep.
I think.
So,
yeah. So I was really lucky.
So in the first 200 days of your teaching, you have to work towards developing a portfolio to be fully registered. So that's great. That's fantastic. So I am wondering if that was she one of the mentors in the school?
He is, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yep.
Yeah. So that would have, I think, Melanie, was it you that talked about the mentoring program? No, someone talked about the mentoring program within their school. So as beginning teachers, each of you will be allocated a mentor when you go into the school system, and this mentor will support you through your first 200 days in the development of your portfolio and supporting you in so many different ways. So it's not so much like a coach, it's more like a support person, someone to assist you. So I'm part of the Mentoring Beginning Teacher training team, and we've trained over 3,000 mentors in Queensland, all throughout Queensland. So these are professional teachers that are going to be supporting you in that first year, and it's so important. And it's a huge part of assisting us to retain teachers in that first year. Very important. So mentoring in terms of learning conversation groups is vital. It's a really important part. What about in terms of your university partners? Did anyone work with university partners with a group of fellow QUT students?
I'll jump in. I am usually on campus and then swapped to online. I think it would have been the week we organised our buddies. So I didn't actually have a buddy in place. In hindsight, probably would have been super helpful. And my university partner, we had a Wednesday and a Monday, half-an-hour sessions, but it was for the whole cohort of prac students, and a lot of them were finishing up. So it was mostly structured around how to get a job and which organisations to sign up to, and a professional development on project-based learning for the high school campus of the college. Really no contact with anybody, and just I felt floating around sometimes. I mean, you're so busy, I didn't really notice, but it just occurred to me then that there could have been more support or more questions answered perhaps. But I didn't feel to reach for my university partner, and she said she was there for us, but there was no contact on her behalf, and no one came to check on me at any time or at any point in my classroom.
Okay. Did you feel like you could email your university partner if you needed to?
Yes, and I did take a mental health day in the middle of it because it all just I got to where I needed to be with what I needed to teach and plan for, and then I just spent a non-teaching day just recovering. But it was things on the fly that I probably would have needed it more like just a debrief, or like what does she mean when she says 3 maths rotations and I have to differentiate, and is that it was questions like that my teacher was so busy she couldn't answer, and I had very little crossover time with her and very little conversation, emailing of templates, but not much unpacking.
I think, you're probably in talking with some of the other students. Did anyone email their university partners about those kind of things? Because I know quite a few students have been, So little things about helping with planning, all sorts of things that university partners are there to assist you with. So
maybe I didn't realise that next time.
Yeah,
I didn't have that sort of relationship either, I must say. We had one meeting with about 5 other people in the whole of the 3 weeks, and it was just, is everyone okay? Bit of a chat, and that was it. But I didn't feel that it was somebody that I could approach with stuff. I guess maybe I didn't understand quite what they were there for. I thought maybe they're more for emergencies as opposed to that day-to-day help and support. I thought it was more just for the big stuff. If something really bad happened on your prac, that's who you contacted.
No, it's not. Very important.
I thought that initially as well, and then probably the only thing that happened with I'm naturally a pretty pushy person. So if someone doesn't tell me what I need, I'll keep hounding them until they do. That's just in my nature. But she actually did ask us to send her our reflections on everything. So after she did that, and then she sort of responded to that side of things, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel a bit sad that some people didn't have that same experience, because it was really, really helpful.
So next time, I think from moving into your next professional experience, I would definitely make that send your university partner a copy of your goals, discuss those goals with them, and if you're feeling flat or you're feeling down, they're the person to talk to. They're the person that, they're there. They probably have quite a few students. Some of them have about 12, but that's what their role is, to support you. They're your university support person for that 15 days. So I would definitely try and make a bit more of a connection with them next time. So a lot of not all of them, but I guess each of the university partners, I guess, connected in different ways. I know some of them did Zooms with a group of their students to get students together and brainstorm and make sure that everyone was going okay. Others went out and visited. I know there were some students, and I actually went and visited a couple of students that were having difficulties as well. So there is that support there. But Amy, I think we need to take a leaf out of your book, and you do need to be a bit pushy at times.
Oh, look, I'm a pain in the backside 99.9% of the time. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not. I am. But I just...
No, it pays. It really does pay to do that. And
especially when I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, when I start going like that, it's just, I can't stop, and then I can't function. Like, so I just, help.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did anybody get a run of relief teachers? Just me?
Well, it's probably different in high school. You get them all the time, and your teachers have to also go and be relief teachers, so it's a bit different. Yeah.
I just had a few days of different teachers coming in. That was certainly interesting.
Yeah, I know, Krista, you're not alone. Lots of students did have that. And, relief teachers get sick and they have to actually go on other duties as well, or they might have a PD or something, or things to do outside of their actual classroom practice as well. So you're not alone with that. And I think that's something as a teacher as well, that when you do get into professional practice, having to leave your classroom and have someone else come in and run it, and things getting behind, and it can be quite stressful.
I was very stressed. I had two different relief teachers. One way older than me and one way younger than me, and they were all fantastic, but I think other people have had ones that made them cry. And
okay,
so I was just curious if other people were prepared for that. I was totally unprepared. I should have been. People get sick.
Yeah,
but it was definitely eye-opening,
especially if your supervising teacher gets sick for a period of time as well.
And those were all the days, the second week, that all my first lessons were out in front of a relief teacher.
Yeah. So. I guess the positives, let's think of some positives, is that you get to see different styles of teaching as well, rather than just your supervising teacher, to see how other people work in the classroom in comparison, because the more teachers that you see, their style of teaching and their pedagogical beliefs and their practices, I think that's a really wonderful opportunity. Did you actually find that, Krista?
It actually wasn't bad. Like, I was really surprised. We actually team taught very well, and I was surprised how much I had to jump in and hold the class, because I knew what the class was supposed to do when they had to do their morning exercises out in the field. I knew what game they were playing, so things went quite well. Okay. But I was really surprised what a substitute teacher actually does all day. There was a lot of like on the fly, let's make up a maths game. Like sometimes they didn't have a lesson plan. So that was kind of an idea of what we might be doing as relief teachers. So
yes, yeah, that's a good experience. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we might move on. Now on the screen, I've just got, these were some points that I put in the pre-workshop activities. They're just some questions that I wanted you to think about. And I just want you to take the next couple of minutes to read through them. And I want you to each pick one, just one point, and I want you to share that with the rest of us. So I'm going to give you some time to do that. So I'm going to sit here and be quiet. Okay, let's have a look. Who would like to go first? Shall we start at the top of my list? Who have we got here? Amy. Amy, would you like to share? A for Amy. You're often going first, I'm assuming.
Hey, team.
Like me. Yeah, yeah.
Just kidding.
Which one was inspired you, or which did you read and think, oh yeah?
Look, I probably don't. It's probably the worst thing that I experienced, but in actual fact, the best thing, if that makes sense.
It does, yes.
Probably, it was just the big disconnect that I felt. And I felt that it got better towards the end, but it was sort of like stepping into a place that just didn't, like, it was not what I expected in any way, as in there was no ICT, there was no mention of 21st century learning skills, like none of those things were at the top of the school's list. So I was sort of unprepared in that way for what I had stepped into. And in the beginning, it was the worst thing I've actually experienced in my whole entire life. But it turned out to be the best thing because it's changed the way I think, and it's changed where I think I might want to go.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodness. So a challenge definitely turning into an achievement. Emily, going down in alphabetical order.
Why not? Did it change me in any way? It instilled some confidence in my experience in the classroom. I've been on and off. I stretched my master's over 3 years. So this being my first placement, I'm 3/4 of the way through my degree. So this should have happened a year ago. And it was such a nice way to realise why you put this placement first. It gives you that real first-hand experience. And I guess if you had any doubts, this would either put you off entirely or really inspire you. I realised that most of the things I'd learnt in theory, seeing them in action, like that consolidated, like the hands-on experience just was 1,000 times more beneficial than me reading any textbook or listening to anyone talk about it, because until you actually see what the mental load and the lesson planning and the needs-based responsiveness to individual students, and just the huge job it is to be a good teacher. Yeah, I was really humbled and baffled and inspired and all overwhelmed all in one. My teacher was quite amazing. Her classroom management was just really inspiring. That was probably a wow moment. I got a 20 person hug today. That maybe I did make a difference somehow. That felt really special. And teaching actually felt really wonderful. Nerves, my first lesson was maths, which is my weakest subject, and I somehow kept it to time and managed the behaviour, which were my 2 goals for the lesson. So the content will just, we all survived. And my background is health, nutrition, and so the kind of emotional and social literacy. And I'm going to start shadowing one of the teachers in Year 5 who has the same passions. And I'm really angling to keep that what I want to teach, or if I could somehow get in a school and just teach that. So yeah, that's great. It's really made me fine tune what I know that I love and that I'm passionate about. And I got to teach some health classes, which was, I totally mucked them up, but we had a great time. So yeah, that was good.
Amazing. That's amazing. I think you've actually covered pretty much all of those points, Emily. Well done.
I went down. I was multi.
That was so good. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing. Kieran.
Yeah, look, I guess I'm reflecting on the second point. What I didn't know about teaching was just how little of it is actually about the curriculum, and how teachers seem to be sort of 2 parts teacher, 3 parts psychologist, another 2 parts child safety officer, and, you know, another couple mum, really. I guess particularly in prep, I tied a lot of hair bands up, and I took jumpers off kids who couldn't take them off, and I did up a lot of shoelaces and forced them to eat the healthy food in their lunchbox first. But then there was just all that stuff too with my teacher sort of, she diagnosed a hearing problem while I was there, and she had earmarked another couple of kids to go and see. A nurse clinic thing was coming, and she's like, I think this boy might have some low-level cerebral palsy, and I think this one's got a hearing problem, and this one's got some sort of learning difficulty and stuff. And how often she was on the phone to, you know, there was one parent in particular who was doing some pretty poor parenting. So, you know, she was ringing saying, he's been off for 5 days, what's going on? And then he finally came to school and she had to ring and say, you didn't pack any lunch, what's going on? So yeah, there seemed to be a lot more going on than was actually about teaching.
I think, I agree completely, and I'm sure everyone in this session tonight can relate to that as well, because it's all about the child. And I guess from my early childhood perspective, it's a holistic perspective. So it's not just about education, it's about the child's well-being as well, because we can't, a child isn't going to learn until all of the other boxes are ticked, until they're fed, they're healthy, they're happy, they feel safe and secure. They're not going to learn. Can I just
add on to that?
Yeah.
When you get to the end stages of their education, when those boxes aren't ticked or they are missed, it's actually, what's the word? Heartbreaking to watch them try and even remotely comprehend something on a board, or to watch them struggle through social situations where you look at them and you think, I mean, this is nothing compared to what you're going to face again when you leave school. And like knowing that those boxes aren't ticked, you can tell when you can go, okay, these kids obviously haven't had, you know, there's been no mum or dad at home. I wonder what they got when they were in primary school, like at the end stages of literacy, what happened when they were in early childhood, because these steps still aren't really met. It really shows at the other end.
Yeah, no, a good point, yeah. Amy. Very good point. Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. Krista, you're up next. K for Krista.
I picked the bottom one. Did anything change about your future career plan? And getting year 6, I was like, oh, why me? Oh, my buddy got prep, and oh, I want to teach the littlies, and maybe I should switch. And I tell you, it was like Amy's point that the worst thing was the best thing. It was, let's just say by the end of it, I got to discuss all kinds of exciting literature I was excited about, stuff I did at uni these kids are doing in year 6. All the math stuff's challenged me. I learned grammar that I didn't learn in school. Like I did teach an explicit lesson on commas and their clauses. Now my writing's improved forever. It's everything I've learned, I've loved, but I also really loved the kids and the behavior management. I know I'm not going to get this at every school, but it was managed so well that I pretty much got to enjoy the kids. There wasn't much out of place. So I think I'm pretty much a sucker for year 6 now. So I didn't expect
next placement.
Yeah, well, yes, and maybe everybody says that, but I wasn't prepared that I would fall in love with the material and with the age group. So it's kind of
great.
I didn't run away crying. So I think a lot of us were probably wondering if that would happen the first week. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. Yeah, I certainly was in my first placement. That's excellent, Krista. Thank you so much. Melanie.
Hi, I chose the last one as well about the future career plans. One thing that I've really thought about is I'm so eager to get out there. I'm part-time at the moment. I actually want to see if I can go full-time next year. I really just want to get out there and be a teacher now.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so that's really fired me up. And I also would really, obviously I don't have too much control over this, but I'd like to try and align with a school that puts well-being of staff and students really high. I was at a school that was a top priority for. So every staff meeting, there was a check-in. How's everyone feeling? The students every single morning, let's do a check-in. You know, it's Wonderful Wednesday. What's something wonderful? It was just really lovely. Oh, and I have to show you because this is super exciting. My teacher gave me resources.
Oh, fantastic. Oh,
So I've got my first resources.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So I'm pumped. I just want to be a teacher now.
Okay, that's great to hear. Excellent. Thank you. Tia.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Anything
something
that
surprised me on my practice placement, just on a lighter note, was that my teacher never ate lunch. She never ate, and she never had time. And the other teachers in sort of our block, none of them ever ate lunch. And
so you spent a lot of your placement hungry.
Yeah, they had lunch duty. They were planning for the next lesson, and they never took time out to eat lunch.
Oh.
And I just thought that was crazy.
It's pretty tricky. I think, I guess there are some things as a teacher that you get used to. Skipping lunch is not a good one, but it does happen. But also developing a teacher's bladder, because so many times you're busting to go to the toilet and you just don't have the chance to. Honestly, I think my bladder, I could hold on for a couple of days. Seriously. No, that's a really good point. No, you have to stop and eat. You know, I couldn't do it anymore. My blood sugar would just drop. It would be terrible. But that's a good point. You really need to make sure you look after yourself. Tracy.
I looked at, did you feel you made a difference? And I think with the kids' names ones, that was the difference with the kids. But the best feedback that I got was that my supervising teacher actually learnt some stuff from me. Because with a number of my lessons, I actually used the iPad and projected it onto the smartboard, which she didn't know you could do.
Okay.
So we had that. There was also a number of apps that I introduced her to that she's now planning to use in the classroom. And the other thing that she gave me really good feedback on was she says, you know, turn around and talk to your partner. And so when I was kind of doing the lesson and I wanted them to have a chat, I would say, talk to your elbow buddy. And she just loved that. She actually even mentioned it in my final report.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic.
So that was really nice to hear.
Excellent. Well done. Well done, all of you. Oh, my goodness. Some really amazing experiences. Yuha. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're here.
Yeah, so I would like to talk to the second point. So, so how to say that? Yeah. So previously I thought selection of teaching content is an easy job just based on the Australia curriculum ACARA, based on the content descriptor. But when I was in the class in the school, I found that the other way around, we started from the assessment. Of course, the assessment, the key points of the assessments grabbed from the content descriptor, but I've never thought about this before. So this is really good for me to select the teaching content for the kids. Yeah.
Excellent. So, yep, looking at formative assessment and summative assessment,
Yes.
but also looking at your observations and examples of annotated examples of students' work. This is a really good point, Yuha, because this is basically what you need to show in your TPA. So that cycle of teaching, you know, the assessment, observation, your planning, and then your evaluation. So it's the full cycle of teaching, which you will find out more about, and it will be part of your final placement. So that's a really good way to end this this journal reflection bit. Thank you very much for that, Yuha. That's a good point. So I asked you, this is the final thing that we're going to do before we go into just touching on our assessment, the second piece of assessment. Teacher's Toolbox. Is there anything that anyone would like to share that you're going to take to your next placement, or something that you can imagine using in your own learning, like possibly a resource of some sort? Anything that you can think of?
This is probably very basic, but I love the idea of the talking tool. So my teacher used a talking tool because they all wanted to talk at once. And I actually went and bought a new talking tool for them, and they were completely obsessed with it. So he lives in their classroom now.
So can you explain, Melanie, what a talking tool is?
Yeah, so in this instance, it was like one of the squishy animals. And so whoever has the talking tool is the only voice I should hear. And we all need to show our best audience manners to that person. And I just found it really effective. And it's funny how they bonded and they fell in love with this character that they called Gary. So when I said Gary could live with them, they were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
So sometimes the simplest things can have the most impact, not just on the students, but on our teaching and how, that's really good. That's a great one.
Good old Gary.
Good old Gary. On your Gary. How on earth did they come up with the name Gary?
Oh, there was a lot of talk. Another student wanted a boy that was called Patricia, and another one wanted Burrito, but the consensus was Gary.
Okay, there you go. Excellent. Okay, anyone else? No?
Mine's more so a tip than a resource. And the supervising teacher I had said, don't always feel like you need to fill the silence. And if you ask a question, she said, you're always going to get those kids who shoot their hands up first. And she said, pause, wait. She said sometimes it takes the other kids a little bit of time to, take it up and think about it, and you'll get more of a response if you, pause.
Pause to let a student think about what they're going to say, most definitely. And also that it's such an important, for me, it's one of the most important classroom management essential tools, wait and scan. If you can't wait and scan, it's detrimental. You have to wait until everyone is silent before you speak. So a very important one. Thank you, Tracy. Anyone else before we move on?
I have probably it might not help everyone, but the most useful thing that I came up with was about using feedback to improve your practice. So, the sheet that we had from the templates, the observation notes?
Yeah.
So I put that blank every day on my teacher's desk, and I used the one from the day before to write a little sticky note, and I just put today I will, and use the things that she had told me that I needed to improve on. And I then put the sticky note with what I would do that day, and then she marked what I did that day against that. So then as I went through the binder, I have all of these in order, progressing with the feedback. And then that was probably the area I scored best in. with her because I could clearly see what to do each day. So I would certainly use that next time.
That is a fabulous idea, Krista.
I kind of stumbled across someone's blog it was called Prepping Your Step, about how to organize your binder, and I saw her sticky note system. So and then my teacher seemed to like it, and then at the end I typed everything out that I've learned for next time from the sticky notes.
Wow.
Because I'm not going in so unprepared next time.
That's what a great resource. That's a fabulous resource. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing those tools. That's excellent. Some really good ones there. So the last thing that we're going to do this evening, first, I guess I just want to acknowledge, thank you everyone for sharing all of those points. Some of them were quite personal, and I just think it's amazing hearing all of the wonderful things that happen during placement, all of those challenges and the achievements, and, you know, coming out at the end of it after 15 days of absolute hard work. And you all seem to have come out much wiser and I guess with a really good understanding of what a teaching vocation is all about, because it is a vocation. And I think after this, you probably realise that if you don't believe it's a vocation, then you really shouldn't be here. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So our vodcast. Has everyone had the opportunity to have a look at the task sheet? If you have got a copy of the task sheet in front of you, whether it be a paper copy or on a device, that will be really helpful for you here. I'll just give you the opportunity to grab that. Okay, so as it says on the slide, it's a 5 to 7 minute vodcast. And so a vodcast is basically what we're doing right now. So I believe the very best thing to use is Zoom. So you would create a Zoom meeting and you would record the Zoom meeting. So like I do with the box up in top when you see workshop 1 that I do each week that I pre-record, I do exactly this, create a meeting and record it. And I share my PowerPoint on the screen from my desktop, which is exactly what you would be doing. You would share your PowerPoint. You would also share a resource as well, the resource that you decide on, and this could be something physical that you would use, you know, you'd hold it up in front of your camera and you would show it, or for example, if it's a lesson plan, you would share it via your desktop. So if you go into Blackboard, into the Assessment 2 folder, you'll find some frequently asked questions. And one of the questions is, how do I do a vodcast? So there are some links to how to actually prepare a Zoom meeting and some suggestions about how you could actually do that. So the actual task, it requires you to critically analyze a real world scenario. And so the scenario that you're going to analyze is there on the task sheet, and there are 3 different ones, and of course you need to do the primary school one, except for Amy, you would be doing the secondary one. And so for the primary it's grade 4, and for the secondary it's grade 9. So the resource that you're going to, it's called a resource, but I actually prefer calling it an idea, because it doesn't actually have to be something physical that you've made. And I'm going to go through this in a minute. But you would respond to this scenario. So basically you need to solve it. You need to work out how you're going to help the class to make the classroom a safe and supportive learning environment. So the analysis, it's going to be underpinned by relevant theory, And if you go through the frequently asked questions, I suggest you have a minimum of 5 references. And so you would also need to reference any visuals that you use. So if you have some nice pictures on your PowerPoint, you would need to reference those. And if you used a resource that you, an idea that you got from somewhere else, you would need to reference it as well, because you can use something that you've seen before, but you would adapt it to be used to solve the particular scenario that we're going to look at. Now, also in week 9, so we're in week 7 now, in week 9 in our Zoom, we're going to have a little bit of feedback as well. So I'm going to give you, this one is for the actual internal, but externals as well. I'm going to do a bit of feedback. So this will involve you sharing what your resource is, and we're going to do this in the Zoom session. So a little bit of feedback and some assistance just to make sure that you're on the right track. So it's due in week 10, which is on Sunday, September the 29th. So that's the basics. So this is the scenario that we're going to look at. So you've been using some team-based group work in class lately. However, in the last day, you've noticed some intense rivalry between students has developed. This is causing quarrels, increased noise levels in the classroom, and displays of aggression, mainly verbal, with one instance of physical. So basically, it's about positive learning environments. And in this case, it is about group work. So you need to come up with a solution to it. How would you actually solve this issue in a classroom context? So in a year 4 context, and again, Amy, a year 9 context. So we're not going to do this. We did this in the internal workshop, but I want you to think about it. These are some points that I want you to think about individually. The specific issues that need to be addressed in the scenario, how you would manage this scenario to support a positive learning environment, what actions might you take, what resources might you use, and what theories might you relate to. So the resource that you might use, there are 2 examples that I've spoken to in the frequently asked questions. One of them is an example that quite a few students used last year, and I'm happy for you to do this because it's a very individual resource because it's a lesson plan, but basically it would be working with students to develop a poster about expectations for working in groups. So a lot of research has said that when we create expectations, they need to be created with the students. And so therefore they have ownership of these expectations, and it's more likely that the students will actually follow through on them. So a poster about the kind of expectations that we might use in a classroom so it would be for the whole group. We're not just focusing on the one group, we're actually focusing on the whole class. So there are 3 examples on Blackboard from prior students. Obviously, all 3 of them, one's from early childhood, one's from primary, one's from secondary, but I'd have a look at all 3. Of course, they were all satisfactory. It is graded as satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And so, yeah. So design and create your own resource that you will use with students in creating, supporting and maintaining a safe and positive supportive learning environment. So you need to outline the reasoning behind the design, what is the desired outcome, and how you will know if you have been successful. I've got some examples of some things here. So you're quite welcome to use the lesson plan. If you are going to use a lesson plan, you're quite welcome to use the one from Blackboard, or you can use one that you use during your professional experience. So basically you would a lesson plan to work towards getting students to create these things. So the lesson plan is your resource. It's the original piece of work. And these things, for example, would be the outcome of the lesson plan. So obviously you would not include these posters or group members agreement because it's something that the students are going to do. So the resource is the lesson plan. Any questions about that? What I would suggest is that once you get an idea, that you email it to me and explain what it is. And I'm very, very happy to go through it and to give you a nod and say, yep, that's definitely a great idea and you should go with that. Or, okay, no, that's not really a resource. I think you would need to have a lesson plan to actually show how you're going to get the students to create the resource or something like that. These are the secondary ones. Now, I will be marking all of your pieces of assessment, so you need to get satisfactory over these criteria. So it's very important that you read through this criteria sheet, this rubric, very, very carefully and make sure that you tick off all of these that you have completed them. The final one. So it's about the creative and innovative use of media, good use of verbal skills, timing of the podcast. The explanation was presented with a high level of organisation, verbal and written communication skills. All required elements of the podcast were included and used effectively to deliver and the explanation and resource. So these are all very important things to consider. Your APA referencing, making sure that the full reference list is provided, and you also need to provide references both visually on the slide and also orally. So you need to actually say Bromford-Brenter stated that, or Coburg stated such and such. You actually need to use the references on the slide. Remembering that it's satisfactory or unsatisfactory. So I am not expecting you to create a masterpiece. Look at the examples on Blackboard. The primary example is a really good one, I think. It's of good quality and it's very casual. He starts by saying, hey, Ange. So it's not, you don't have to, you can read, you can refer to notes. I'm happy for you to do that as long as you look up and make eye contact every now and then and use fairly good verbal skills. PowerPoint, just making sure that you have a few points on the PowerPoint that you speak to. So yeah, satisfactory or unsatisfactory. But something that you need to remember is that if you get an unsatisfactory in this piece of assessment, no matter how well you did on your placement, you will fail the unit. So you have to receive a satisfactory in this piece of assessment. Why I am stressing, please make sure that you email me and discuss what your resource is going to be. And I'm very happy to tell you if you're on the right track. If you've got any questions at all, don't look on Facebook. Don't talk to other students, talk to me because I'm the one that's going to be marking it. Look through on Blackboard, I've got 3 steps that you need to go through, including reading the frequently asked questions, and these will be built upon. So if you ask me a question, I'm actually going to enter that into frequently asked questions as well. It's very important that you try and get this done as soon as possible because it's something that The actual vodcast may take a little bit of time for you to do, so you need to make sure that you do it timely, and you also need to make sure that you upload it with plenty of time. I would not upload it on the Sunday. I would make sure you get it done prior to that to make sure that everything is okay, and also remembering that these can be fairly big files, so it will be an MP4 file. They can take quite a lot of time to upload, so it's very important to remember. Any questions? Probably not. I'm happy to answer them now, but I would imagine you're going to want to sit down and pull the task sheet apart, have a look at the vodcasts and the frequently asked questions, and then get back to me. So please, I cannot stress enough the importance of you emailing me your resource and also your questions. It will be quite difficult to fail this. The reason why you would fail it is because you have not read the task sheet correctly. So I want to make sure that you have a very good understanding of what you need to do. Any questions? I hope I haven't panicked you. My aim was to put you at ease, but are there any questions that you have at the moment? No. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.
Up on the slide. Oh, we got a question?
No, you explained that really well. I'm going to re-watch this and take notes with the actual criteria next to me. So it all makes that, that will sink in then.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, next week, Positive Learning Environments 2. I really want you to watch the clips prior to this workshop and complete the relevant reflection ready for discussion, because positive learning environments, obviously this is directly connected to supportive learning environments, which is what the podcast is about. And I think it was was it week 2 that we talked about positive learning environments as well, and remembering, you know, that expectations need to be co-created with the students, all those sorts of things, and thinking about age-appropriate experiences, thinking about stages of development, possibly, if we think back to EUN130. I know I had some of you in that class. We talked about Kohlberg, so get out your notes and have a look at that again. So, yeah. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions. And once again, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with me. I find this session one of my absolute favorites. I feel so jealous sometimes, because that first experience, your very first placement, I really do think it's such a special time. It really brings so many things together for you. I think, you know, after, I think as Emily said, what you actually read and you listen to and you discuss and you reflect on in class, it's not until you actually have the opportunity to put it into practice that it really does become clear to you. So it's wonderful to hear those results. Okay, that's it for the evening. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next week. And I am also looking forward to hearing all of your wonderful ideas for resources. Okay, thank you everyone. What time have we got? Oh, 7:49, a little bit early. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.